Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast with Restored to More. We're so stoked that you're here, and we are even more stoked that Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith are here to talk to us and inform us. These guys have an incredible ministry and incredible work. I'll let Charity talk about it.
Matthew and Joanna are the founder and CEOs of Renovate Life. Matthew is a certified life and relational coach. Matthew's area of special interest includes working with professional growth, addiction recovery, relationship health, leadership development. Joanna is a level 2 trained restoration therapist and is certified in EMDR. She is also a CCPS trained in the multidimensional partner trauma model through Raabsmith. She uses a client-centered approach, and areas of special interest include working with couples going through recovery, relationship issues, leadership, addiction, self-esteem, anxiety, and spiritual issues. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on our show.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Super excited.
Well, okay. We heard from a birdie when we met you guys at a weekend event that you guys have a book coming out. Yeah?
We do. We've got a book that we've been working on, feels like for a decade, but only about a year. It's going to be coming out. It's called The Intimacy Pyramid. And the plan is for it to launch this Christmas. So you can buy it as a gift for all your friends,
there you go.
Or for your spouse,
Absolutely.
And yeah, we're really excited. It's been a culmination of a really long journey for us, but one that's been incredibly meaningful.
Well, let's definitely dive into that. To tell our listeners, we had the pleasure of meeting you guys at the SILS conference in San Antonio, Texas, Sexual Integrity Leadership Summit. And you guys gave an amazing talk. I mean, you were one of our favorite speakers, and I hope the other speakers don't hear that part, but you were one of our favorite. And we were taking notes, and we're like, well, these guys, they're just fired up. They're excited about the work they're doing. You can see the passion all over you guys. And you could just see that there was a lot of work you were doing, a lot that you felt had to be done around these issues. And we were just drawn to that because obviously we're like, man, we want to make an impact. You guys were so excited about making the impact you are. So why don't we just start with your story that you kind of touched on a little bit of at the conference, but it was more of a teaching talk. So even for Chair and I, we'd love to hear, how you guys got to where you're doing the work you are today.
Yeah. We met just over 12 years ago, and it was not an instant connection, but we found our way to really admire and enjoy each other. And we dated quickly. We got engaged even more quickly, and we were married very fast.
Yeah, about 4 months after our first date, we were married.
Wow.
And shortly after that, we decided, let's do the normal thing, like sell everything we own and move to California. And we from the beginning had this idea that we loved being together, and we loved who we were as a couple, and we really loved the fact that we were each passionate about marriage, and we were passionate about enjoying marriage and kind of making the most of it.
Yeah. And I think some of the early things we heard when we told people we were engaged, getting married, even spurred that on more. We heard so many negative views of marriage. It's kind of like ball and chain, or you're giving up your freedom, or you're in the honeymoon phase that'll wear off in a year. Just this really kind of sadly disconnected negative view of what the marriage relationship can be long term. And so, I don't like being told what to do. So I was like, well, that's not going to be us. And so we became pretty passionate about both us having a healthy relationship, but also wanting to help others have a healthy relationship. Didn't know exactly how we'd go about doing that, but knew that's something God was calling us into really early on.
Yeah. And that was probably the big problem. We knew what we wanted. We had no idea how to get it. And, our training in marriage was good in some ways and poor in other ways. And so we found ourselves kind of butting heads, yelling and walking away, and conflict and communication issues and all these things that come with couples that want a great marriage but don't have any idea how to make one. Yeah. And so we were excited and lost kind of all at the same time. And we had the opportunity to be in Pasadena at our graduate school at Fuller Seminary, and they had a lot of wonderful resources for couples. They have a program for therapists. And so we found some resources that started to change things quickly for us. We came across this resource called restoration therapy, and it really changed the way we communicated. It changed the way we dealt with conflict, and we were like, we figured it out. This is great. We've unlocked the key, and so things started to get better and better. But we still kept kind of finding ourselves stuck. We were kind of hitting ourselves against this glass ceiling. And 3 years into our relationship, it became kind of clearer and clearer to us, or to me, what the problem was. And it was a lifelong struggle that I had had with sex addiction and pornography, a struggle that I had lied to Joanna about. I had given her pieces of information that weren't really true. I told the story I wanted her to hear, and I hid the rest. And about 3 years into our marriage, that came out. And it really just kind of set a bomb off in our relationship, because we'd had this vision of a great marriage, and we had a lot about our relationship we really enjoyed. But this cancer had really kind of, it had eaten away at everything. And so we knew that if we had any chance of going forward, we had to figure out what it looked like to rebuild and to really kind of start from scratch, and to figure out, okay, what does this process look like?
And we dove into a ton of resources. I think in a lot of ways, God put us where we were for a reason, because without those resources, I don't think our relationship would have made it. And at that time, there weren't as many resources especially for partners going through this, for couples going through this. So we kind of piecemealed some things together, somehow stumbled on some things on our own and got through it. But through that journey, realizing we weren't willing to do all that hard work to just settle for surviving in our relationship. We were only going to do it if it meant we could really thrive afterwards, and still have that vision of deep, safe, intimate connection that we'd gotten why we got married in the first place. And and we realized as we went through that journey, a lot of other couples feel that way, but don't have those resources either. And so we got really passionate about helping other couples find the resources, have the vision, have the hope, realize that it is possible to get to that place, even after going through betrayal and recovery. And then as we did that and started working with a lot of couples going through recovery, we started learning so much about what healthy relationship means, how to build it, and realize that the foundations, those tools, all of that is the same for every relationship, whether you're this recovery couple or not. And so that's really what spurred the book that we're writing with another therapist up in LA, Dan Drake. And so we're kind of developing this structure together for all couples, but kind of what we've learned through couples who've gone through the worst of it. And so how to rebuild, or how to build healthy intimacy. Yeah.
And I can remember when we did our disclosure and we were talking, and the truth came out. And my greatest fear was that we had forever lost what we thought we had in the beginning, that we would never get back this idea of what our relationship could be long term. And that was probably the scariest part of that journey, was that we would not regain what was possible before all of this came out. And that was part of the reason I hid it, because I didn't want to lose that potential. But what the reality was is, in hiding it, I was guaranteeing we'd never meet that potential. And so, for us, we were so hungry to say, all right, like, we can get through this initial phase, but what next? And that's kind of always been the question for us. Okay, what next? What next in our relationship? What next in what we want to work on and grow in? And so,
Wow.
So are you guys our doppelgangers?
It's just amazing. It's just so cool.
So similar. Oh my gosh. Really quick. I don't think we've ever shared this on the podcast before, but so we, very similar to you guys, there wasn't an immediate attraction.
Yeah, I know, it's wild. We had that too.
We were friends for 3 months, dated for 3 months, engaged for 3 months.
Something like that.
So very similar. And then discovery happened 2 years into our marriage, and we're like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similar. And the thing that I think resonates most with us, Charity had this phrase. First, I love what you said. Like, you didn't want to go through recovery, or whatever word you want to call it, healing, restoration process. You didn't want to go through that just to have a marriage that's surviving. Like, awesome. Now we're surviving. Like, great, we're survivors, but we're lonely and we're not intimate and we're just living, we're roommates. But hey, you know what? At least we can get divorced. Like, no, you were like, listen, we're going to go through this if we can thrive. Like, are you telling me there's life after this, and first off, I'd love that because obviously you guys teach that now, which is so amazing. But we were in the same boat. Charity always asked, we did a little video about this because she was like, will I ever laugh again? Like, that's what you want to know. Basically, I think a woman saying, will I ever be able to connect with him again? Will we actually have this connection? Will he really be my best friend again? Will we really make better memories than the ones I have before? Because right now, all the ones I have before, they were good, but now they're tainted. And now it's almost like having these beautiful pictures that it's like they're out of focus because I really didn't know what was going on back there, and they went from this beautifully crisp, amazing photo to like being fuzzy. And the question is like, are we ever going to actually make good photos again? And I love that that's what you guys do. And we found the same thing. I mean, that's why we do what we do, is because we feel like as we went on this intimacy discovery journey, it was like, wow, like this applies to couples that have gone through recovery and those that don't, to learn how to have amazing marriages. So I'm going to ask a question about that. Like, you have this book coming out. What were some of your biggest discoveries that were like, wow, like these were the principles that we learned that could drastically change another couple's life, marriage, all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, one of the things that we learned really quickly was the order matters, that how the way in which you get into intimacy matters. And I think there are no shortcuts. And I think a lot of what we discovered is that it's really easy to skip steps or to skip parts of the work that are maybe either difficult or challenging or you've not been trained in. But all that tends to lead to is this kind of falling back to kind of feeling like you're starting all over again. And so one of the things that we realized when we started to do this work was we need to slow it down and we need to focus. And before we start building the things that really get us into that intimacy, we need to make sure that foundation is set. That foundation is so important. Because a foundation built on something that's shaky will never really be able to survive those difficult times. And even post, betrayal, we still have difficult times. We have little kids. There are things called pandemics. We have taxes and bills and businesses, and all of these things will put stress on those foundations. And so we knew that foundation had to be so solid and so secure if we had any chance of moving to that kind of higher level connection that we dreamed of, that we knew that were possible, and we'd even kind of seen glimpses of.
Right. And that way it wouldn't just come toppling down when any little thing came up. And that ultimately is not going to feel safe. It's not going to feel secure anyways. And so we started with the bottom of the foundation of that pyramid is honesty. So realizing, okay, nothing feels real, nothing feels secure or safe if there's not openness, if there's not honesty. And for that relationship, that's on both sides. Otherwise, there's this imbalance. If one person is holding information, that creates an imbalance, an unsafe relationship. And so starting from that place of openness, of honesty. And so for us, it was kind of going through a full disclosure process, a reset, saying like, okay, we haven't been living this way. We have to kind of reset, get it all out, and then maintaining that level of openness, of transparency moving forward. And so we learned a lot about what honesty is, about what honesty isn't, a lot of misconceptions around honesty, right? That I think are so important. And so much of what we teach to our clients now is honesty is not just about lying or not lying, right? It's about having self-awareness. You don't get off the hook because you weren't aware of it, right? You have to do the work to be aware so you can be fully open. You can be fully honest and transparent in that relationship.
Yeah. And it's also knowing what you need and being willing to ask for it. We see in the first relationship, between Adam and Eve, what do? They hide, they cover and they hide, and they begin to tell each other, there are parts of me that you cannot see. There are parts of me that you won't accept, that you won't like, that you will react to. And so the only way to kind of break that cycle is to begin to kind of let our partner see who we are, the things that we desire, the questions that we have, the places that we are each and every day. And this practice of of honesty is one of which I get used to really kind of being open with the person who's chosen me. And that's what's crazy about betrayal and folks who lie, is that I've chosen this mate because I've said, you're the person who won't leave me. You know, you're the person who will stay with me for life. And then I hide from them as if, you know, that promise wasn't there in the first place. And so being reminded of that vow and reminded of that opportunity to say, you're the person who gets to know more about me than anyone else. You're the person who gets to know me fully. That's why that's part of why we're together. And so and also knowing that because we've been practicing hiding and masking and covering most of our lives, that's going to take some work, you know. Not all, you know, very few of us just get into that naturally. And so we know that there's work in kind of doing that and taking those steps.
I got a question.
Yeah, can I comment on that?
Sure, go for it.
I think that's one of the hardest things, is even understanding what we need.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing to be like, and then it's like there's so much work in that. And it's a good work. Like, this isn't like a daunting. When I say this, I'm like, oh, this isn't like a daunting, oh my gosh, I got to learn myself. Like, no, like, this is actually how we understand how to self-care and what we need and how to vocalize those things. Because, you know, we talk to couples all the time. We're coaching couples all the time. And it's amazing how there's such an assumption mindset because we're raised on movies. And it's like, we talk all the time. We're like, the woman just all of a sudden is swept off her feet because he knew exactly what color to get it and what to do and what food she wanted and how to make her feel special. And like, according to the movies, they must have done this work. The actors had done this work, right? But we look at that and we're like, well, you should just know. You should just know. And it's like, no, you don't just know. That takes a lot of work to understand what we need. And then it takes an extra step of vulnerability to actually be like, hey, just so you know, I'm a needy person. We have a joke that like everyone's needy. Like, I'm a needy person because we all have needs, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you recommend a couple to become self-aware? Like, where would somebody start?
Yeah. Great place is in therapy, is in counseling, is in coaching.
With us, the Raabsmith team.
You know, it's so helpful to have yourself reflected in another person back to you. It's really hard to become self-aware on your own. So either in a professional, in a pastor, and a close friend who is somewhat self-aware, who can help you with that process, right? To have yourself reflected back in a healthy, secure other person, right? And so that's the trick, is finding someone who is healthy, who's going to reflect back the truth of who you are to you, both in the places where you struggle and in the places where you are beautiful, where you are worthy. And so that, I think, is usually pretty important for most people.
Yeah, and I think peer groups, you know, support groups are another great place for that. It's as I start to hear other people's stories, I start to go, oh, that's what I was experiencing. That's what I was feeling. That was what I was yearning for. And so it's in those testimonies and stories and experiences where I actually get to know myself better. I get to connect with those moments. And in really healthy relationships, that's also going to take place in the marriage. You know, we reflect to each other. And, you know, I coach a lot of guys and I'll tell them, your wife is probably seeing something you're not. And you're not seeing it because you're not looking at it. You're looking at her. And you're seeing something she's not. Now, it takes two pretty healthy, you know, pretty grounded people to take that reflection and go, thank you. That was wonderful.
Thanks for sharing.
But ultimately, that's what we want to work towards. And that comes with that practice of gaining that awareness and doing that in spaces where I learn that people's reflection of me is an opportunity for me to know myself more, which means I'm going to get to show myself compassion. You know, I'm going to get to treat myself well as I really understand the experiences that I've had, the ways in which I didn't receive the love or safety that I deserved in my life, in my childhood. I'm going to get to see those things. And that's what really helps me know what I need. It helps me know what I have to do to grow to take that next step forward and really, we love James Clear, and he talks about, what's your 1% better, and I think that awareness is not like, okay, what's the top of the mountain, but like, okay, what's the first step I'm going to take in this journey?
What can I do
and
this week?
That's what I have in front of me. And then I'm going to evaluate from that point to see that next step.
Yes. And it has to be a safe space. You have to have a safe space to grow in. And so figuring out what that is for you. For us, we went to this group and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier at Fuller, where we were going to school together for couples. And it was an 8-week, 9-week course, psychoeducational. And we learned things that transformed our understanding of what marriage can be, what it can look like. We're like, this is amazing. And a week later, we're like, and it doesn't work. And we told Sharon, the creator, and she's like, go see this therapist who's trained in it. We went to her for 10 more weeks doing the actual work with her. Night and day, 180-degree difference in our relationship. And so it was actually that practical experience of growing in self-awareness and practicing those things that made all the difference for us.
What I see you guys saying is that creates a safe space in the home. And now you can kind of level up, right? Now you can kind of go to the next place. And again, what you guys talk about is you can't go ahead of that, because you jump ahead, you actually don't have a foundation. You couldn't start putting up plywood on a dirt lot that wasn't paved and had concrete like put in. Like there's no way, right? So what's that next step? Where do you guys go after getting safe and being known? What's next after that?
So after honesty is safety. And part of being safe is being able to show up reliably and in a regulated, healthy way with the other person. And you can't do that very well without that awareness. And so that's why we start with honesty before we kind of move into that safety.
Yeah. And a big part of safety is taking responsibility for what you have control over.
Mm-hmm.
I have control over what I feel, think, say, and do. And so no matter what happens in our life, no matter what Joanna does or does not do, I still have control over those things. And so for me to show up responsibly is to evaluate what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm saying, and what I'm doing, and owning where it's constructive and helping our relationship, but also owning where it's destructive. And so a large part of our recovery was for me to take responsibility for the impact and fallout of my actions, what my lies, what my infidelity meant to Joanna, what it meant to our marriage, and what it looked like for me to put that back, to kind of put back what I had taken out. And so that happens in small ways. When we violate love and trust in a relationship, I still have to put something back. I need to show up different, and I need to communicate to my partner that I get it, and I can be healthy, whether that's a kind of one-time occurrence or a repeated occurrence that has to be addressed. And so it's that in that taking responsibility, when both people do that, that's when we find that balance where we feel like, okay, I have this partner and we are equal because we're each responsible for ourselves rather than I'm responsible for me and them. Right. And that's where a lot of marriages get stuck is someone feels like I'm responsible for me and you, and they can't, it doesn't feel like a partnership. It feels like parenting, or it feels like this kind of responsibility relationship.
And the other big part about that is being able to do that reliably. And so for a relationship to feel safe, you have to be 95% or more reliable. So it's not just enough to be able to do that and take responsibility like 50% of the time. That will not create a healthy, safe relationship. And so realizing like, okay, not only do we have to do that, we have to do that consistently, reliably. And that's going to take some time. And we want that time. That time is a good thing. We want to be able to demonstrate that we are trustworthy to each other before we dive into trusting, full trust in that relationship. And so that's why that safety level comes before trust. We want to make sure this is a safe person, this is a safe relationship that's worthy of putting my trust in. And a lot of couples jump to trust right away, even when they haven't known each other very long, because it feels really good. Like I want someone I can fully trust, right? I think we see that in movies, right? Once you meet that right person, then you just dive in head first. And so being able to kind of rethink what trust looks like in a healthy way in relationship, how we intentionally build towards healthy trust as well.
Yeah.
When I hear you guys talking about safety, I just hear boundaries. like boundaries.
Totally.
Realizing like what you can control, and unhealthy boundaries is like trying to control everything and manage everything. And it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
But a lot of people haven't been taught that or been educated on that. So it is so important. I know I didn't, and not until our own personal recovery journey is when I was like, oh, I should probably learn what this looks like and implement it.
I can't tell you how many times I still in our marriage. I'm like, well, you made me. And she goes, whoa. I can't really make you feel that. I can't make you say that. I can't make you do that. And
I heard the most like powerful talk once, and she was like, you are not powerful enough to go into that person's body and choose the emotion for them. I was like, dang, that was good.
And then you use it on, me.
Yeah, now use it.
Not for you. You don't use it for you, use it on me. Let's just be clear. Luckily, we have a safe place where I can go. Thank you for your input.
We come home from a talk and we're like, this is all your fault. That's what they said. That's pretty much everything they had to say.
Pretty much what happened there.
Oh my goodness.
But that's so good. And it's taking responsibility for those things and really going, where do they come from, right? Because most likely it wasn't what Charity said. It's something she said that triggered a past experience that I'm reliving right now. And that's why it's amplifying the emotions of what's going on. You guys, this is so good.
Yes.
So I think you said the next level after that is trust, right? Now, how do you engage in trust to hang out on that level and go up from there?
Yeah, trust is really about this regular practice of kind of cooperation, collaboration. It's that idea that we are better together than just individuals occupying the same space. We love this idea that it's our relationship that is really wonderful. It has its kind of own sense of identity, its own passion, even its own purpose. And so this sense of trust is this ability to say, my life isn't just mine anymore. It's now wrapped up in our life. And so it's working on that, and it's looking and asking kind of questions like, what does our marriage need? What do we need? What is our next step? And it's rare that we find in our culture. So much of our world talks about, it's me, I, and even great concepts like self-care and taking time for myself will all of a sudden, it will have no problem kind of infringing on the relationship or the other person. And it stops being kind of self-care and it starts being kind of selfish. And so it's this idea that I can care for my relationship. And as I do that, I'm going to also be caring for myself in ways.
Yeah. It's also about this kind of feeling of confidence that my partner does and says things that are for our relationship, right? And so there may be a little bit more room and flexibility in your relationship, a little bit more grace for each other, not immediately jumping to the assumption of, oh, he's trying to hurt me, right? When things aren't going great, right? When we do still get into conflicts, being able to slow yourself down and say, you know what, maybe that's not what he was trying to communicate. Let me check in with him before I just go into that automatic reaction of being defensive or angry or creating this narrative in my mind that may not be true, right? We create so many narratives about what the other person's thinking, feeling, their intentions. It's amazing, this whole other story. And being able to set that aside and say, that may not be your reality. I trust this person, so I'm going to engage in a healthy way with them around this.
Yeah, I was having coffee with a buddy of mine, and we had been in recovery for a long time. We had done a lot of work and even talked about how great our relationship was. And I can remember sitting and I was kind of venting to him, and I was like, you know what, I just don't know that she's for me. I just don't think Joanna has my best intentions in mind. And this friend knew our story and knew us well. And he sits up and he looks at me and he says, this woman who has forgiven you, who has accepted you fully as you are, who I always see in public with her arm around you, with her eyes on you, you're telling me this woman isn't for you? And I looked at him and I was like, no. and it was telling me that I had kind of moved out of this space of trust, that I had somehow come to this belief that this person who has shown me unconditional love, this grace-filled love, really for the first time in my life, that I could somehow believe that she wasn't for me. And so it was a reminder of, I need to practice trust. I need to practice that when she has concerns, when she has ideas, when she has things that she wants to push back on. It's not a sign that she's against me. It's actually a sign that she is for me, that she is for us. And it was amazing, because as I started to realize that, I realized what she was saying, what she was asking for, was actually the best for me and for us. And so it's just, that's trust at work. It's that ability to kind of hear our partner from the place of love and care, and not kind of from this place of condemnation.
Yeah. And what's so cool, so many clients I work with, they come in with all these issues they want to talk about, right? So many issues. And I go, well, it's really just one issue, is the emotional process you go through in your relationship. So let's figure that out. And all of a sudden, when you do, it's amazing how, like, poof, almost all those issues become non-issues, right? Things that would have triggered it in the past, now that you've built a foundation of honesty, of safety, and you trust that person, they're just not there anymore, right? And so it's really cool to see couples go through that process, and you can kind of feel that, sense that in your own relationship.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. It reminds me of how many times we would say something, and if we had just taken a second to say, hey, when you said this, I heard this. Is that what you meant? Most likely the answer is no. Like, that's not what I meant. Like that, like 90% of the time.
Totally.
I think and even now we still have that. And it's just because I think we have, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the reason we do that because we have these filters and these core beliefs about ourselves and the way people used to talk to us, or maybe a person that said something that sounded like that one time, and so it went through that filter. I mean, is that why? I mean, let's get real. Like, you talk about intimacy, like we feel like communication is the framework for all intimacies, and yet even sharing on this journey, sometimes we still are amazed at how bad we are at communication. And it's like, geez, why are we so bad? Why is communication one of the hardest things to develop?
Yeah. One, for me, I have always struggled with this feeling of defective, that there was something wrong with me, and my addiction just fueled that. It just, it told me, yep, you're broken because you can't stop this pattern, but it wasn't just my addiction. We could spend the day together. And if I asked Joanna about her day and she would say, it's kind of tough, the first thing I heard was, you failed me today. Now, what she would say is, I had a tough day, but what I would hear is, I failed her, and that's that narrative. That's that belief speaking, not her speaking. And so my trust is my ability to say, what she said is she had a tough day, and what she's really communicating is I feel safe enough with you to tell you where I'm struggling.
So good.
I believe in you. That's what she's really communicating. And it's being able to let go of those narratives and to step away from them and to step into what's really there relationally and enjoy it.
Yeah. We like to say our brains like to fit or filter. So whatever my pain is, I'll try to fit this situation to equal my pain, or I just will like filter it out. It'll be like it didn't happen. I won't have any memory of it. And so learning to identify those moments when you're either like trying to cram this situation into my pain, like I can make it fit, right? Or am I missing all of those really good moments of healthy connection we're having? And I'm not aware of those, so I'm not allowing them to play a factor in terms of building trust in our relationship.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Wow, so good. Okay, next step on this pyramid is vulnerability.
Yes.
Vulnerability. Yeah. So vulnerability is really this kind of unfolding of ourselves, and it's this journey together to really to kind of once and for all heal some of those wounds, heal those things that have caused these pains to kind of reside in us for so long. And vulnerability is the ability for a couple that has deep trust of each other to really kind of open up even more. It's this ability to talk about the past. It's the ability to talk about our experiences and our struggles with those, and the fears that really kind of surround so many of those. And we were at a workshop one day, and we were walking through our fears with a therapist friend of ours who wanted to practice on us. And no one ever let a therapist practice on you.
It's worse than barber. Barber practice, tattoo practice, therapy practice. Like those three are the ones. Barbers can recover, tattoos no. Therapy might just be bad for life. Like you could go back. I had a traumatic experience. I let a therapist practice on me. Keep going.
He was like, we got a workshop. And I was like, great, it'll be fun. We'll learn about ourselves. 7 minutes in, I am bawling. There's snot coming out of my nose. And I'm like, I don't know about this workshop. What we uncovered through this workshop, and it was really amazing, was that, kind of my greatest fear is being in these situations in which I'm going to get attacked. I'm going to get hurt because things kind of get out of control.
Wow.
And right after that, Joanna talked about her fear, and her greatest fear was that in situations that are difficult, that are scary, that she will be all alone.
Wow.
And what we realize is that this has been one of our major issues as a couple, that my fear of getting hurt has sent me running.
Left me all alone.
Yeah, and her fear of being left all alone is to kind of ratchet down control and to say, come here, and these deep fears that have left us fighting with each other for reasons we haven't even, known. And so it was in that discovery with each other that gave us such insight of what each of us needed. And it also gave us such empathy in why we do what we do, and that's really what vulnerability allows, is it allows for this empathy to start taking place, to realize that my partner does things that are destructive because of ways in which they were hurt and wounded. They are operating out of that woundedness, and it's not okay that they are, but I get it. I get why they're doing that. And that's what allows me to be compassionate, to be patient, to sit with them in that pain. And that's really what vulnerability as a couple is being able to really sit with each other in that pain. So we get to really celebrate the joys. Brene Brown talks about, like, you can't selectively numb emotions. So if I numb all those painful, scary emotions, then I also numb all the joy and the overcoming and the victory that we get to experience. And so vulnerability is this place of extremes. We get to go to those extreme depths, but we get to celebrate those extreme victories and those wins.
It's also about risking, letting go, empowering the other person, right? It's really about choosing interdependence, right? Not being dependent or enmeshed in the relationship, but choosing to kind of let go of some control, to lean in and be interdependent with this person, which leaves you vulnerable, right? And so you only want to do that with someone who's safe and who you trust. But it really is a way that you maybe feel exposed, but also feel more fully known, more fully connected, more fully supported than you ever could if you didn't take that risk, if you didn't lean in that way.
Which is amazing, because it leads us right into you, into me, you see. You see. I'm sure you guys that have heard that a million times. One time, like 4 years ago, I was like, oh, I never thought about that. But, right, which is the pinnacle. So we talk about arriving at intimacy, like, and this is amazing. Obviously, it's an ongoing journey still, but talk to me about how vulnerability leads right there. What is the top of that pyramid?
Yeah, intimacy is all about this just kind of synergy of two people who are so well balanced and intertwined, and, like Joanna said, interdependent but not dependent. And it's really this vision of the Trinity. I mean, that's what we understand the Trinity is, that there are three healthy entities all existing in one. And while there's difference, there's unity. And that's this idea of intimacy, is that while we're different, we are so united that we seem as one. And that's what the scriptures say, is that they become one flesh. And it's not that they lose their identity in that, but is that they get so close that you see them as one. And you
almost create this like new identity and we always say there's a purpose in intimacy, right? God has a plan for not just you individually, but your union. There's a reason your relationship exists. And in that intimacy, you actually the health, the healing, and the relationship is going to flow out into the world somewhere. It may be into your family, your kids, your work, right? But being able to figure out what that purpose is drives that intimacy even deeper.
And it really allows us to play. And, you know, we have this thought in intimacy that it's so playful. We have little kids, and it is so fun to watch how uninhibited they are. You know, they're just, they're so free with their bodies. You know, sometimes they just don't think clothes are that, you know, important. You know, they're free with their voices and their volume. You know, they're free with their thoughts and their questions. And that's really about what a safe and secure union is that I'm able to play. I'm able to be so relaxed and so at peace with myself that I get to be silly. I get, you know, I get to unlock these parts of me that for some of my life I've hid out of fear of being rejected or being exposed as unacceptable. Now I get to really let these flourish. And so that's you know, we were always worried about, like, well, we don't want this goal to be this super serious, like like this like ball and chain, you know. We believe that God desires intimacy for enjoyment and for fulfillment, not for kind of this like this hard thing to have to carry. And so
there's this passion, this playfulness that's released when I trust that I'm fully known and fully accepted, right? I have the freedom to go to those places that otherwise I can't get to if I'm judging myself or if I'm scared of others' judgment of me, right? So we're really, like you said, able to release those inhibitions and be fully present and in the moment with that other person, enjoying it.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh.
I hear just, you're free to be me is what I hear. Like, you're just, it's this freedom, it's acceptance, and it's just, that's the way that God intended it, you know?
The picture you guys painted is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so pure, and it's so full of life. It's so full of joy. It's so full of acceptance. It's so full of camaraderie and collaboration. And like you said, a healthy interdependence and dependence at the same time. Like, we rely on each other to be ourselves, which is so interesting. It's amazing. And that is so powerful. Like, I am just all about this. So I love what you guys do. I know we're going to connect more. I know that you guys have an appointment coming up. How can our listeners learn more about what you guys are doing? You know, that you guys, obviously, again, the book coming out, it's going to be called The Intimacy Pyramid, released this Christmas.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that our listeners can get plugged into that you guys are doing?
Yeah, they can. One of the best ways to find us is renovatelife.us. And we have a couple of different ways we work with people. We offer online courses. People can work with our practice if they're wanting kind of more one-on-one help. Most of all, we just love to be a resource. As Joanna said, I think what was a huge, really a blessing from God was that when we needed resources, when we needed expertise, when we needed people to show us the way forward, that's exactly what God showered us with. He gave us people, he gave us opportunities, he gave us funds that we didn't expect to get. There was everything we needed for really our liberation. And so we love to pass that on to couples. Even if it's a couple we're not working with one-on-one, we love to connect people with great resources, with great work that's out there, because there is so much that God is doing on these front lines. And whether you're a recovery couple or you're just a couple that says, I want more out of marriage than we're getting, you know, I think so many couples that, you know, they have kids and they're just surviving family, you know, and it's like, they may not have betrayal, but they may be in the sense of, I didn't get married for this. This is not why we did all of this. And we want those couples to have as much hope and excitement for what's possible as the couples that are in that place that we were, which is there any hope? Will I ever laugh again? Will I ever recapture that joy, you know, that we once had? And so the greatest news is that God is on that side. And I think that's what we have seen in our experience, is to know that God's on the side of our marriage. We may try to screw this up. He is on the side of us winning. and he's going to give us what we need to get there. So we love to connect with people and to help them on that journey however we can.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, your hearts are amazing. We're so excited for all that you're doing. Thank you for being on the podcast and sharing all the wisdom that you do.
Yeah, love what y'all are doing and super excited to continue to collaborate.
Yes.